Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast.
He's got a unique background: homicide cop, detective, police officer, blah, blah, blah. Actually, he's got a great story from the Oklahoma City bombing. Not great, but it's horrible and dramatic and traumatic, but to be there on scene the moment that that building was blown up. You guys all remember that.
Yep.
How many people died that day? 130?
168.
168. A couple thousand more.
A thousand people walking.
It's crazy.
What year was that? April 19th, 1995. 26 years just passed.
Yeah, it was just a month ago.
Yeah, just less than a month.
So his company, they have a bunch of people like him that are expert witnesses and experts in use of force. So for example, if I was involved in a shooting and a prosecutor decided to stick it to me, I'd call them and they would dispatch him or his brother or a couple other guys. That's what they do, and they'd come to my town and liaise on my behalf between a local attorney and the office that arrested me and all that stuff and sort it out. That's not what he's going to talk about. What we're going to talk about are the things that get good people like you put in jail for trying to protect yourself. This isn't to do these things and you won't go to jail, like how to be sneaky. It's the shit that gets people locked up because of the ignorance that happens in the judicial system. Looking at how shit's so topsy-turvy now, we are judged by our peers, right? Well, down here, the good people in this county are going to react to somebody using force to protect themselves completely differently than they would even in Nashville or in Chicago or in another more liberal area. Would you agree?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So it's not always just what we think is right. And we just saw what just happened in Minnesota, which you probably all have personal feelings tainted by your watching the media, but you get a jury that's afraid to do what's right because of ramifications, and then the legal system doesn't work. But that's not what we're here to talk about. So I'll give you a gift.
Thank you. As Mick said, my name's Gary Eastridge. Started in law enforcement in 1979, February 2nd, 1979. I retired out of the homicide unit in October of 2000. So
You guys hear him okay?
Yeah, everybody here okay? I'll try to hold I hate mics. And I'm not a public speaker, so I apologize. When I retired out of the homicide unit. I did my last 7 years in homicide. We worked a lot of self-defense shootings. We worked a lot of shootings that claim self-defense as well. I went overseas for a year, worked homicides in Kosovo. Anybody been to Kosovo? I know a couple of the military guys have. It's a wonderful place if you get a chance. After I came back, I started my own PI agency, and then a friend of mine got elected district attorney. A guy that I had handled several of my murder cases when I was in the homicide unit. He offered me a job as chief investigator. Spent a little over 10 years doing that and retired again to come to work for CCW Safe. Speaking of CCW Safe, I'm going to reference a couple times. If anybody's got any questions, just catch me and I'll answer it. That's about the extent of my sales pitch. I don't get paid a commission or anything like that. They take care of it.
I can tell you that they are sponsors of this event, which is probably something important to say.
And we also have a discount code for the participants of S12. I'll have to get that from Sharon. No, I can't remember what it is. I'm old and forgetful. Anyway, one of my primary duties at the district attorney's office was reviewing all uses of force by law enforcement that resulted in significant injury or death. So I've probably reviewed around 130 fatal shootings or other uses of force that resulted primarily in death. A few of them were just injury. So I got a little bit of experience in it. What I wanted to touch on tonight, I've got a full PowerPoint presentation I do. I'm so tired. I know you guys are tired, and girls, and you probably would all be asleep by the time I got over or got finished with it. But I just wanted to give you a couple of the things that we see in our business, things that I saw in law enforcement, where good people found themselves jammed up because of either poor decisions or so many other factors that you don't think about. You come to this training, and this training is outstanding. The medical portion of this, you're going to use a lot more than you're going to do the shooting portion. Speaking of the Murrah building, you know who the first responders in the Murrah building were? Everybody in the Murrah building. There was numerous traumatic amputations. There was had one girl trapped in the basement where a surgeon actually amputated her leg with a case pocket knife provided by one of the workers in the building. You just had to do what you had to do. There was a juror, the federal courthouse set on 4th Street, the Murrah building was on 5th Street. The juror went outside to smoke a cigarette, took a shard of glass that removed his, I don't remember which arm, but removed his arm. So the things that you're learning with tourniquets, you're going to use that a lot more. The medical in general, tourniquets being one component of that, than you ever will that gun you have on your hip. Like, as a matter of fact, anybody that asked me, do I need CCW Safe? I said, probably not. But statistically, you're not going to need that gun you've got on your hip. But if you do, you might want to think about things. But anyway, anybody familiar with Jerome Urson, the pharmacist in Oklahoma City from 2009 that shot the armed robber and is now doing life in prison for shooting an armed robber? I was one of the investigators on that case, and was in one of the cases that I helped prosecute. This is an incident where he was a guy like probably much of you in this room. He was a pharmacist. He's an educated man. But he didn't know when to stop. He shot a young man, an armed robber. He was 16 years old, Speedy Parker. Chased the other armed robber outside of the building. Speedy Parker, when they made this entry, and it's not funny because of, you got a young man who's dead, and you've got a tax-paying citizen who's doing the rest of his life in prison. But and one thing, if you've got any cop friends, we've all got a little bit of a dark humor. I think the military guys are the same. That's how you deal with the things you see. Speedy came in, well, he didn't align his ski mask right, and he had his eye holes over here. So he's struggling with his eye hole when Jerome shot him with a Taurus Judge, loaded alternative with 45 Colt 410 every other round. One pellet struck him, traversed the brain, put him down, but he's still alive. And I can't, Javante Ingram was the other kid. That kid runs out. Had it ended there, Jerome Urson would have been invited to the police awards banquet and given a medal. And as a matter of fact, before the video surfaced, the cops who investigated were patting him on the back saying, man, you did a great job. He chased Javante Ingram outside the store, and as Javante was fleeing down the street with at least 5 people, because they all testified for us, firing rounds at him. Anybody have a problem with that? Where is your threat at that point? He walks back in. Now, keep in mind, this all happened in a span of, if I recall right, it was 47 seconds. From the initial exchange of gunfire, chasing him out, returning back in. This pharmacy was about the size of this open area right here, very small. By our calculations, he had to step over Speedy Parker. He lays his Taurus judge down, gets his keys out of his pocket. If you Google search his name, you can watch the actual shooting on YouTube. It's still on there. And then watch his interview after that. Anyway, he walks over, unlocks a drawer behind the counter, takes out a Kel-Tec 380, walks over, charges it, leans down and fires a real nice pattern, center mass, which were the fatal shots. So now you have murder. You went from hero to zero like that. Knowing when to use force, knowing when not to use force is critical when it comes to the legal ramifications of your actions. Jerome, 59 years old when this happened, is now doing the rest of his life in prison. This is a guy that was in the military. He's a retired colonel. He was a colonel only because he was a pharmacist, and they brought him into the military into that, where he gained that rank as an enlistment because they needed military. Now, he claimed he'd killed a bunch of people, and this all came out too, and this is something I want to touch on. You know, if you decide to cooperate with law enforcement, I'm a homicide detective, I want you to talk. I love letting you, wind you up and letting you talk, because I've had a lot of people talk themselves into prison. If you watch his interview, he claims that when they're getting his name, he asked for his name. The detective Jacobson, who's a good friend of mine, asked him his name, and he says, Jerome Mercer, I've killed a lot of people. And he says, well, okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Where do you live at? And he gives him his address. He says, most of them with a 50 cal. I was a squad leader in Iraq, in Desert Storm, the original Desert War. It was all bullshit. He lived a fantasy world. He claimed he was blown up in a Humvee. He wore back braces, a full brace that went up his front and back. Claimed that was from being blown up in a Humvee. All of these records, military records, are archived in St. Louis. I fire off a request, and they send me his whole packet. Closest he ever got to Iraq was London. He prepared the inoculations for the guys going to the combat zone. That's as close to the worst danger he ever faced was maybe getting stung by a needle. So anyway, the other case I'm going to talk to you about, and then when I get into the things that I'm going to make suggestions, keep in mind these are things. There's not necessarily a right and a wrong. There's just things that you need to think about: gear selection, ammo selection, gun selection, that sort of thing. Gun modifications. Young man back here asked me about gun modifications yesterday. Steve Maddox was our member who, in just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. He's 42 years old. He rode in a motorcycle club, not a 1%. For our cops in here, he wasn't a 1%. But one of the fellow club members, they had a disagreement. The guy started harassing him and trying to bait him into a fight and that sort of thing. He did everything we would recommend somebody do. Disengage, avoid, try to de-escalate. De-escalation is the big word in law enforcement right now, for good reason. Anyway, they end up in an event together. I'm trying to think, the deceased name was Kelly Wilkerson, and Kelly attacked him in the restroom of a little venue. It was what am I trying to say? Just like a wedding hall or something, and they were having a little get together. He attacks him. Kelly's wife testifies that he's on top of Steve, choking him. Takes four people to pull Kelly off of Steve. Steve flees outside, runs into Kelly again. They do the little dance where you're fighting, but you're not really fighting. Got each other by the shoulders, and they bounce off a few cars, and two more witnesses pull Kelly off of him a second time. He makes it to his motorcycle. He retrieves his Rossi 44 Special. Probably wouldn't have been my choice, but he's telling someone, he tries to call 911 to tell him he's been attacked. While he's out of his phone coverage, or his phone provider's normal coverage area, so the phone won't connect. So he's telling one of his friends about what happened when Kelly rides up and comes after him. He shoots him. He shoots an unarmed man. Is it legal to shoot an unarmed man? Kelly Wilkerson's 6'4", 300. Steve Maddox is 5'7", 170. If I was Steve, I'd have shot him. I mean, there's a substantial size disparity. Law enforcement shows up, and I hate to pick on law enforcement because I have been. Half my family are law enforcement. We got their text messages. This is another thing you need to think about. If you're involved in an incident, we're going to get your social media, we're going to get your texts, we're going to get your emails. Anything you say and communicate, we're going to have that. And I say they are, because I'm no longer part of that. But we get the police officers' text messages, and they indicate in there, hey, let's wrap this thing up, it's a slam dunk. My feelings, I think they probably rolled up, saw that they were all on motorcycles and said, screw it, dead guy didn't have a gun, live guy did. So they filed first degree murder. North Carolina, first degree murder, you got one option, life without parole. So I became involved in that case, consulted with, when I was still at the district attorney's office, with the defense, and we were able to put on a good defense, and Steve was found not guilty. But there was all of these little things that would come up. I worked for a district attorney's office for 10 years. Attorneys, are there any attorneys in there? I'm not trying to embarrass you, all right. Attorneys are advocates for their client. They're going to do what they can to win for their client. District attorney's office, who's their client? The state. So they put the firearms examiner for North Carolina, a kid that looked like he was about 14, had never testified before. He testified under oath that the 11-pound trigger pull, double action trigger pull of that Rossi 44 Special would indicate premeditation because of the weight it took. It couldn't just accidentally discharge. So those are the things, and I'm going to get into this right now. When you're selecting a firearm, I don't like to go too far outside of the norm. If you see the gun I'm shooting today, it's a pretty stock HK VP9. I had Lazy Wolf do an action on it, clean it up a little bit, but other than that, it looks like a stone stock gun. I love custom guns. I collected custom 1911s for years. Swenson, Hogs, Novak, all of Garthwaite. I love custom guns. There's two reasons I don't carry a highly custom gun. Number one, the police are going to take it if you're involved in an incident, and I've seen how cops treat guns when they take it. So I don't want to see my $3,000 custom pistol booked into the property room. And in the same vein, I don't want, if there is absolutely no issue with a self-defense incident, it's probably not going to be an issue. It's going to be moot. Anything that you've done to those guns is probably to improve the performance of it. But if there's a slight issue, and there always is, 90% of the time there is some kind of issue with a self-defense claim. And then you lay out a gun that is highly modified, has a trigger pull that has been reduced 50% from norm. A prosecutor will twist that and say that, look, you're looking for a gunfight. Look, he spent $3,000 having this gun customized. So it's just something to think about. Ammunition. Who carries zombie killer ammo? They sell that shit, that stuff. Zombie killer ammo. Do you really want to go into court and explain why you were carrying zombie killer? Do you remember the case of the law enforcement officer with the dust cover that said your had nothing to do with the shooting? However, they used that as evidence of a callousness. Now, jury ended up acquitting him, so it's irrelevant. I watched the video, and it was a problematic shooting in my books, but I'm glad I wasn't sitting in judgment of the officer. So, you seen the barrels that you could buy for your Glock, SIG, HK that says smile and wait for flash? Do you really want a jury looking at that when they're deciding if you committed murder or you acted in self-defense? So there's just little things like that. Then on top of that, you got to know the laws. We're all in Tennessee. How many of you researched Tennessee laws before you came here? I did. There's tremendous resources on the internet. We use Jacob Paulson with concealedcarry.com, if you guys know them. They have an interactive map, a permit map, so do your due diligence. Anybody know what stand your ground laws are? Duty to retreat. Does anybody live in a state that has duty to retreat? There's only a handful.
I used to.
Yeah. What that means is if you have a threat, you have to try to get away from that threat before you use deadly force. So, does everybody understand? I've been here for 2 days with you. All of you can shoot. I've seen you do it. Does everybody understand when you can shoot in a self-defense situation? What the threshold is? And it's pretty universal across the country, even if it's deadly, if it's a stand your ground, a castle doctrine state. You got to be in a reasonable. Anybody know what reasonable means? It's awful quiet.
Where other people would also see it.
Where the average man would arrive at the same conclusion. But it's one of those, it's
nebulous. It's nebulous.
Yeah, it's ambiguous. There's got to be a reasonable threat, belief, fear, it's worded different in different states, of great bodily injury or death. What does that mean to you as a concealed carrier? If I get into a road rage incident and you're in a car and you pull up next to me and say, I'm going to kill you, does that give you grounds to shoot? No. I mean, it's common sense. But you have to establish, do you have a legal reason to be where you are? that you did not contribute to the situation, innocence, and that threat was imminent. It's about to happen. So you have to have a little more than just the threat. It has to be a reasonable threat of great bodily injury or death. Use of deadly force. If you're involved in an incident tonight, the way it's going to flow is you or someone else is going to call 911. Everybody familiar with the Miranda warning? Anybody not know what the Miranda warning is? It's right against self-incrimination. If you're talking to a 911 dispatcher, do you have a Fifth Amendment claim? Who says yes? You don't. Anything you say to that dispatcher, first of all, you've called in on a recorded line, I assure you that. And you're going to hear your words again. The Miranda warning only applies to custodial interviews or interrogations. So you have to not be free to leave before the Miranda even applies. If you're at the scene and that policeman rolls up and goes, "What happened?" and you say, "I shot him," this, that, the other, is that admissible in court? Absolutely. It's freely, you're in custody. So you're going to have the 911. You got to think about that. What you say, how much you say. 911, if you listen to a 911 call, what you hear them say, don't hang up, stay on the line with me. And they're trained to ask questions. And my suggestion is always to answer those in a baseline that will give that first responder the information they need to help assess the situation. I was attacked, I'm wearing a blue shirt, blue jeans. The attacker was wearing a red shirt. He's down, he went east, something like that. Then get the hell off the phone. There's nothing else you can tell them that's really going to help them. The next thing that's going to show up is if somebody's shot, fire department. You ever testified because of what somebody said? Absolutely. And when I was in homicide, IMSA, which was our ambulance service, and firefighters, we got some of our best information because people just open up and tell them. And they're not in custody, so there is no Fifth Amendment claim there. Then the first responders, you get your fire and medical. Some places that's one and the same. Some places in Oklahoma it's two different. They're going to roll out a fire unit and they're going to roll out an ambulance service at the same time. Next person you're going to show up is probably a 22-year-old, a 25-year-old policeman who's probably going to talk real ugly to you and point his gun at you and tell you to get on the ground and do all those things, which I suggest you do. You don't win an argument with a cop on the side of the road. That's what, I think my dad originally told me that, but that policeman's going to want to know what happened. He's going to start asking you questions. You remember the physiological responses we talked about when I talked about my shooting? And what was your first name again? You Marshall. Yeah. Dave. When Dave was talking about those physiological responses, if you can't, I didn't know what I had done because I was so shook up. I was 22 years old at the time of my shooting. So is that the time to be relating in detail to that police officer what you've done? No. You know what the police officer would do if he had just shot someone? See you in a couple days with my FOP rep and my FOP attorney, because we do FOP work as well. Yes, sir.
I was told because, you know, like the police will get a couple days, some time to get away from the scene.
Yes.
Get their thoughts together.
An emotional trauma.
Right, but we're not allowed that same. And what I have heard some people say is call an ambulance or maybe call 2, tell them that you're having breathing issue or some heart arrhythmia and you need to go to the hospital.
Are you lying when you say that?
Maybe not, but that gets you.
If you're legitimately having that, yeah, that's absolutely right. But let's say you're not. Are you gonna go to the hospital? Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Are they gonna note in the file? There's nothing wrong with this guy. He came in fine. He shook up. So I'm hesitant to overtly lie to law enforcement. To me, it's a lot better to say, officer, I'm scared to death. This is the most traumatic thing I've ever been through. I want to talk to you, I want to cooperate 100%, but I really want my representative here first. I like representative better than attorney, because attorney's got a bad connotation. So what kind of law do you practice?
I don't do much anymore, but it was corporate tax.
Okay, so you, all right, never mind. Yes, sir.
How are most law enforcement going to respond to that response?
Depends on the situation. If I roll up there and here you are, tax-paying citizen, good, got a job, got a decent car, you obviously are a productive member of society, and I've got a guy laying there who's got a mask over his face and a gun with electrical tape. Back in the day when I first started out, every bad guy's gun had electrical tape on it. I don't know why, but you're probably going to be, they're probably going to tell you, oh, okay, no problem. And we've had a couple with CCW Safe, we've had a couple where that actually happened, where the officer said, hey, everything looks good, going home. What's the worst that can happen at that point? Well, you know, the evidence isn't real clear. You're under arrest until I'm sorted out. 2 nights in jail is better than life. You know, I've been in a lot of jails. I've been in prisons across the country. There's not one of them I want to spend 2 days in, 2 nights. But there's damn sure not any that I want to spend the rest of my life in. So, and I want to keep this open. I really don't have all that much more. But if you have any questions, just throw up your hand, and then I'll do my best to answer. The evidence has got to be pretty compelling that it is a crime, I believe, before an officer's going to. You know, cops are people. You could tell me that, and I go, hey, yeah, that's okay, I understand. And the next guy go, oh, you're not going to tell me? Well, you must have done something wrong, so you can go to jail. So there's no right or wrong answer there. There's no, every cop is going to respond maybe a little bit different. What's going to happen next? The investigation. They're going to call out a homicide investigator like me, like I was. And that guy's going to come to you and you're going to say, hey, I don't want to talk. He's going to say, all right, here's my card, have your attorney call me, we'll set up an interview, hopefully. That's how it's going to go. So then you have time to go get with your rep, you've got your 2 days to decompress. Steve Maddox went straight down to the police station with him, gave him his phone, unlocked it. You know, iPhones, I think it's from the 6 and up, are virtually impossible for law enforcement. Everybody, does anybody know what a Celebrite is? Celebrite's a machine, you plug it in, it downloads everything in your phone. Pictures, text messages, emails, if it's on your phone, they've got it. Well, the newer iPhones are encrypted to where they can't get that. Steve handed it over, opened it with his passcode. They started asking him questions. How many kids you got? I got 2 girls, he had 3. Is that a lie? No, he's so stressed out he didn't know come here from Second. I think my granddad used to say that, but ask him, what's your daughter do? Well, she's in college. He tells them the college that his wife went to. What is that evidence of?
Stress.
stress, emotional trauma. Is he being dishonest? He's giving incorrect answers, but there's a reason that cops get 2 days to get things clear before they come in and sit down and give a statement. So hopefully by the time you get to the investigation stage, you've got your representative, you've gone in, and your attorney's either going to say, if it's a problem, he's going to say, we're going to tell them we're not going to talk, or he'll allow you to come in and give a statement. Next thing that happens depends on the jurisdiction you're in. Grand jury or direct file. And I don't know, I think Tennessee is grand jury. Yeah. In Oklahoma County, where I work for the district attorney's office, you'd come over and meet with the district attorney and he'd say, fill out an information, a blue sheet they call it, and bring it in and they charge you directly if they feel like there's a crime. What do they do if there is no charges filed? Everybody heard of an FBI clearance? We can't prove it right now, but we're going to keep it open just in case we can. They don't give you here is that was a justified shooting, here's your get out of jail free card, we'll call you if we need anything. You don't get that. If there's a death involved, it is perpetually over your head. There's no statute of limitations in homicides anywhere that I'm aware of. So, if the district attorney decides and files charges on you, or a grand jury returns a bill of indictment, your next 2 years are going to be the worst 2 years of your life. Steve Maddox wore an ankle monitor for 2 years. He could only leave his house to go to work and to go home. That was it. I like my house. I couldn't be there every day for 2 years. I'd go crazy. And then there's going to be several court appearances after that. Arraignment, that's nothing. Preliminary hearing conference, nothing. Preliminary hearing is the next big one. The preliminary hearing is where the courts decide whether they have probable cause to bind you over for a jury trial. What happens if you get bound over for jury trial? I always said you're trusting your life with 12 people not smart enough to get out of jury duty. It's the lowest common denominator. Back when I started, our jurors were pulled from the property records. What did that mean? That means that that person at least owns property. It pays taxes. What they do now? Driver's license. You smart enough to get a driver's license, you're smart enough to sit on a jury and decide if your actions were legal or not. So this is something to think about. But in Oklahoma, where I still live, you're looking at a 2-year from incident to adjudication. That is, if there's no excessive continuances, if there's no, let's say you get a mistrial. Guess what? You have another year. Start all over. It goes again. So, this is kind of out of order, but I wanted to touch on this again because Dave and I had talked about it. We both touched on it out there on the range today. The physiological responses that you will experience if you're involved in a shooting. Second guessing, I didn't really experience any of that. Auditory exclusion, like I told y'all earlier, sounded like it was a mile down the road. You just hear the pops. Shooting a .357 Magnum with the muzzle that far in front of me, it's like it was down the block. Tunnel vision. I literally, the person I was shooting at turned into a silhouette because it's what we shot on. It's the old I forget, B-78s or whatever they are, the silhouette target. That's what I was seeing when I was shooting. Loss of motor skills. Well, Brian talked about earlier, your breathing. I think I held my breath for maybe the 5 minutes that he could do it because I thought I was going to pass out. By the time I did my reload, in my slideshow, I've got a picture of me, the press shows up, and I've got a picture of me standing next to the car, and I look like I'm about to go down. I've got that holy shit look. So, anyway, that's really my condensed version. Does anybody have any questions, or yes, sir?
I got 1,000 questions, but I'll
Okay.
limit it to one 2-part question. Eliminating the threat of force is sometimes hazy to me because I'm thinking as a parent and a father in my home, somebody breaks in the middle of the night.
Okay.
And they come in, I'm able to meet them in the hallway. I start firing my pistol. Somebody determines that the first couple shots killed them, but I emptied the clip.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that beyond the threat of force?
Well, that's a question that I can't really give you an answer for. The evidence is going to dictate, was it dark in the hallway? Did you do like Jerome Urson? Did you go up and put the last 10 of your 15-round magazine dead center in the chest? So there's a lot of variables there.
Well, and that gets
You
my
got to use the force necessary.
Being a inexperienced gun owner, you can probably make a case for adrenaline and fear and all that kind of stuff going into it. My second part is, if they pull records and they see that I've attended classes like this and I've taken an interest and I've taken some training, obviously that will change that bar to something.
It could. We recommend everyone who logs their training keeps their certificates. I absolutely do that. I keep track of everything. For me, that says I'm a responsible gun owner. I'm constantly learning, not just shooting, how to put a tourniquet on, how to address medical needs, that sort of thing. Can a prosecutor then say, well, look, he's been going to these gunfighting fantasy camps for 6 years, he's just looking for a reason to get in a fight? Absolutely. Will an attorney do that? Absolutely. But to answer your question, the evidence is going to dictate whether or not that was excessive or not. If it's arbitrary, you said make a case. You don't want them to make a case. What you want is to be able to articulate the threat, show that you responded reasonably, and that once that threat was over, you stopped. Jerome Urson, good, bad, worse, because of the decisions he made.
Let me add one, because I did have a question. We talked about Jerome Urson. Could a case not have been made, not that I'm advocating him going out of his shop and chasing someone, but is that man that he was chasing not a threat?
Is Jerome Urson a police officer?
No.
Then why would you care if he's a threat or not?
Well, I mean, I think I have heard in some other training that if I have fear of him receiving bodily injury or death, that I can defend him.
You can.
In the same situation.
But as a civilian,
It's the chase that
there is Garner versus Tennessee and Graham versus Connor. Those address what excessive force issues, and one of the things the Supreme Court's ruled is that law enforcement cannot, the use of lethal force is the ultimate seizure. Causing someone's death is the ultimate seizure. Law enforcement can use the fleeing armed, dangerous, fleeing felon doctrine to prevent that threat from continuing. So if he robs you and I shoot at him and he takes off running, I can shoot at him even though he's fleeing, because I can articulate that he is a continuing threat, and by allowing him to escape, we pose a greater danger to society than we do by not shooting at him. As a civilian, that's really not applicable. Once that threat is diminished, and when that person turns and is fleeing, there is no imminent threat of great bodily injury or death. Somebody else had one. Yes, sir.
So, what we did was medical understand about internships, and a lot of guys in the room probably have also an ankle and say because it's a self-defense situation. And call to get the information needed. When I registered, I got a blue shirt. It was a self-defense situation. He's going to quickly set that up.
Yeah.
And you get there, and you know, I end up going to detain or whatever. And come to find out I had a certificate on me, but I didn't apply. I'm freaked out. I didn't do a damn thing because it television on. How's that play out?
I actually get that a lot, and if you know, there's several writers, Claude Werner, several others who have touched on this. Would you render aid to somebody that you just shot? Mick says no. I say it depends. Because what really looks good to a jury is this guy tried to kill me. I was forced against my will to shoot him, and then I rendered aid. I can see it cutting both ways. It would depend on the circumstances. If there was any chance of that threat still existing, absolutely not. So, yes, ma'am.
Can you explain two different things? The first one is shooting someone over personal property in your home, and then the second one is shooting someone regarding a third party.
Defense of others?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're talking about shooting somebody on a property offense is generally a bad idea.
Right. Well, like if it comes to
Oklahoma has the Make My Day law. That's what it's titled. If you are in my house, the presumption is you are a threat. So Texas has a law that allows the use of deadly force for theft committed in the evening. Would I shoot somebody for a theft? Hell no, it's not worth it.
So if somebody comes into your house, wants to steal your TV, depending on what state you're in, you can't like shoot them because they're not really posing a threat to you. They just want the TV, and you can't shoot them over property. But if they pose a threat, like they show a gun or a knife, then it's posing a threat, then you can possibly...
Most courts give deference to your home. Your home is your castle. That's in ruling after ruling. So if someone breaks into my home, do you know why he's there? No. Do you know that he's just there to take your big screen that you just got? To me, that with Oklahoma laws, that would be a justified shooting, armed or unarmed. Now there's always, every case is going to be investigated, and there's always exceptions. You know, I don't know if I forget which state it was that has a similar law, but where the guy shot the burglar that was taking a shower. He heard him break in, guy was in there for a while, the guy goes to the shower, he goes, gets his shotgun, shoots him through the shower curtain. They
for a female to say I was in fear of my life, and so I shot to say no, I was there compared to say they having tons of experience and with articulating technically or the cost now or whatever, and the jury itself would be.
Well, again, it's going to vary from state to state, depending on your state laws. But in Oklahoma, it doesn't matter if it's male, female. If you're male, female, if they're in your home, they're perceived to be a threat. Defense of others, most states allow that same threshold. If I have a reasonable belief that he's going to face great bodily injury or death from him, I can apply the lethal force. So some states do not, but I think for the most part, they do.
Can I give just one?
Yes.
To that? So I've taught people in several states. I was a certified instructor for license to carry in several different states. And you can go down, a lot of rabbit holes on, hey, what if this, what is that? As you're thinking about these different scenarios, first ask yourself, was it reasonable and was it necessary? And if those two, if you can answer yes to those, not reasonable to you, but reasonable to a normal person, and was it necessary, that's a very good start. And you can usually kind of answer the question yourself at that point. So those are the first two things I usually ask myself in response to that.
Absolutely. Is it worth potentially spending the rest of your life in prison for?
Yeah, there's a saying that what was it?
That's,
Is it worth?
Well, we have a saying that we tell our clients, honestly, guys, if it's not worth dying for, it's not worth killing for.
absolutely.
I truly believe that, I've lived that, and it's not worth it.
Absolutely. And it's not worth spending the next 2 to potentially 5 or more years defending your actions. For me, the threat is going to have to be pretty threatening. It's going to have to be very apparent that there is that threat. I'm going to finish up here in just a minute, and then I'll hang out over here so anybody wants to go and get in bed, because I'm not far behind. Well, that doesn't sound right. I knew I'd count on Nick for that one. How long? What was your question?
So just as far as, okay, maybe I ran my mouth and I pissed the dude off, and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go. Like, I try to de-escalate, I try and back out of that situation. Like, how far do I have to go, like I say, like I try to piss somebody off, he's mad at me, so I've contributed to the situation, I'm not being angry about my actions. Like, how do I back out of that property? How far do I have to go?
However you have to back out of it. De-escalation, what am I trying to say? Where you actually detach from the situation, get away from it. If I have to say sorry and turn my ass and run,
Right.
I've run from guys before, I'll do it again.
If I can, if it comes down to the shooting, then, like...
So what you're saying is you added some gas to this bonfire at a few points, and then it turns into a full-blown blaze. Are you in trouble because now you had to shoot him? That's what he's
The
talking
answer is you're going to have to explain your actions. And if there's text messages or actions on your, Dave and I were just talking about a young lady in Arizona, road rage incident, where they cut her off, they start brake checking her, she finally goes around them, but her passenger, who happened to be an elderly grandmother, gives them one. How do you articulate that somebody was threatening when you go? So, your question is, I understand it. Very seldom is one party totally innocent and the other party totally guilty. But that's just that much more incentive for me to break contact, to get away from it. Sorry, didn't mean it, I'm out of here. Verbalize it, get out of there. If they pursue you, now you've got a different situation. Yes, sir.
Tennessee just rewrote that portion of the law.
Did it?
Yeah, about that, making sure that if there's a distinct breaking contact between you and I having let's go outside and settle it.
Yeah.
And you and I come back inside and you keep coming after me. I've broken contact, gone back inside and you reinstigate that issue.
Yeah.
I do have the right to defend myself.
But
you got to verbalize that. You've got to have witnesses.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you've got to have witnesses. Dude, I'm so sorry.
I've never seen a state that actually put that in a statute, but what you'll see that in is a lot of court rulings.
Yep.
What you don't want to be is in a court ruling, because what that meant is you went to court. And that court rulings, decisions are usually 2 to 3 to 5 years down the road. So that means your life is impacted for 2 to 3. Not to mention the fact, taking a life, a lot of guys in here have done it, military or put in the position to, it's the most traumatic thing I've ever been. That dark humor I talk about, I can laugh about it, but it's something that I think about daily. And it's been 42 years. The most traumatic thing for me was to call my now ex-wife and then my good God-fearing, church-going, if the doors are open, parents and say, I took a man's life tonight. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of stuff in the media about law enforcement, trigger-happy cops, and that sort of thing. I've never met a cop that wanted to take a life. I've never met one. It is traumatic. You will carry that emotional baggage with you for the rest of your life.
That's a good spot to stop.
Yep. And like I say, I'll be around if anybody wants to talk about the Murrah building or...
I want you to talk to him more. I think that we could go down 80 rabbit holes a piece. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about it. I think the most simple... Go ahead. You didn't clap for Brian, you didn't clap for Z. I've been up here talking for days. You haven't clapped for me. It's good. No, it's good. What I asked you when we were walking the other night on the gravel, I said, why are you here? Right? And the answer should be, you got pubics? Oh, dryer sheet, the old dryer sheet.
It's every time.
You're here to get good at all these skills, but why? Why?
Just in case. Just in case.
Why? Just in case what?
If it defends
You ever need them?
Not the odds.
For what?
Not the odds, it's safe.
For what? Greg, why? What'd you say, Greg?
I want them to be 80 years old.
Just 80, but you said
Live a long and happy life.
you want to live. Just in case to live, so that you can win. To live. To live. To live. So does shooting a guy over your TV provide you a long and happy life? Probably not. Does chasing a guy that pissed you off provide you a long and happy life? Probably not. So, he just said reasonable and necessary. Does this thing support the desired outcome, my desired end state, to be alive? Yeah, I shot him, I smoked him, but I'm in jail. I shot him, I smoked him. His family chased me down and murdered me. I shot him, I smoked him. My wife left me because she thinks I'm psycho because I pressed the throttle and kept engaging. Now I'm a lunatic. No, that's the simple metric. I'm here to live a long and happy life. Does engaging or pushing violence fulfill that? It shouldn't. And so we talk about ways to look justified. How about just be justified? You talk like we want to appear righteous in our actions. We'll just be righteous in your actions. Like, should I lie? Righteous man don't need to lie. I'm not talking religious. Just right. You pushed me to the point that I had to do this thing. I'm trained. You guys got more training in the last 24 hours than any cop within 100 miles of here, unless he's on a big city SWAT team. Guarantee it. Am I lying?
Nope.
Am I lying?
Absolutely.
You have more training with a pistol than most law enforcement officers in the free world. So that being said, you have more skills with the gun than probably the bad guy. Which means that if you're paying attention, you probably are not going to get caught in that position. Let's end it there because everybody's like, I think there's a tick betwixt my cheeks. There's still gear for sale up there. We do have a sale on their product all weekend. I use it. It's the insurance that's covering our business as well as me when I'm out in the world, and I'll never use that because I can deflect. He mentioned, I will say one thing, you mentioned Claude Werner. Claude was a Green Beret. Claude wrote an article years ago Our number one job is to break contact. If you're gonna live, you break contact. If I never have to fight you, I'll always be in good shape. Google that, breaking contact, and just read all of the things that come with it. Let's party.
Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.
I said I got me some gunfighter gun law. Gunfighter gun law, baby. Gunfighter gun law, no more gunfighter blues. Made in the USA, amazing lubricity, 100% synthetic, baby. So it's gonna last you longer. So go on CarryTrainer.com and order yourself some gunfighter gun or gunfighter lube to get rid of your gunfighter blues. I said go on and order yourself some gunfighter lube. Gunfighter lube. Yeah!